there was lots of sports in the way of Olympics. My favourite one of that was the trampolining, until I learned that it was all about doing spins and backflips and that. I thought they were just trying to see who could jump the highest, which would have been amazing. But right, I wanted to speak to you about my favourite book ever, which is Monster Man by Jim and Duncan Surname. Now, right, admittedly, this is a children's book, or sort of like young adult teen fiction nonsense. So it may seem inappropriate for me to claim it as my favourite book. I'm supposed to stand up here and pretend that I like a book with loads of words and loads of pages, but I don't like really long books. I think they are arrogant, if anything, right? In the same way that any film worth anything should be 88 minutes, not a second longer or shorter. Every single book should be 120 pages. If it is more than that length, then they should just send it back to the editor and refuse to sell it until people learn it should be shorter. And Monster Man comes in at 97 pages, which is, thank you very much, it's even better than that. Now, in order to talk to you about Monster Man, I have to tell you a short story. A few years ago, I was performing at a venue much the same as this, to 3 people. It was much the same as this in as much as I was on stage, and that was it. It was a Junglers. To the uninitiated, a Junglers is a sort of chain comedy club where they breed hatred. It's also a place you'll often find stag and hen do's knocking about. The collective noun for both of those is bastard. Now, I was performing to 3 individuals. One individual was a lady called Karen. She was the inventor and owner of Junglers. The other person was a lady called Vicky. Now, she was an actress who was most famous for portraying the character Yvette Carte Blanche from the TV show LOLO. And the third person, oh, by the way, me just using their first names only means that I've forgotten their surnames. It is not meant to imply any sort of closeness or anything like that. They are strangers to me. Now, the third person was Rick Wakeman, from off of pop music and Freemasonry. Now, he is the reason that I talk about this event. The actual circumstances which led me to sort of performing in an empty Junglers, apart from these 3 people, is surprisingly uninteresting, and I won't waste your time by telling you how I ended up in that situation. All you need to know is I was staring at Rick Wakeman as he stared at me, and he reminded me of the character of Zack from Monster Man. Now, Zack is in many ways the person who gets bullied by our hero. He is in many ways the Gregory Akerman of the book, right? Now, our hero is a guy called Nick Olson. He is 15 years old and in love with Jane. Jane is well into monsters, the occult, paranormal and stuff like that. He thinks she is wrong, but instead of telling her that he thinks she is wrong and he is better than her and his opinion should be taken into consideration above and beyond hers, he decides not to do that because he's not a dreadful, dreadful sexist, and instead he lies to her with the hope of kissing her at some point. Now, while he's lying to her, they get involved with loads of shenanigans involving finding and killing potential werewolves, vampires, ghosts, they go to haunted houses. It's tremendous, tremendous fun. Now, Zack is Jane's hero. He is a man who believes in the occult and explains to her every single thing about all these individual sort of occult and paranormal people that they meet. Now, let's take you back to Junglers that day. When I was performing, I was looking into their faces. Now, the owner of Junglers was looking at me with sort of blind indifference, a similar indifference that a cat who lives by me sort of looks at me. We've got a semi-regular relationship where I used to say hello to the cat most days, and she would say hello to me. We'd have a stroke and play, and it was grand until I went to see a psychic who told me I'd only have 8 shots at life. The cat found out about this, and knowing that it was one best than me at life, has just looked at me with indifference ever since. Everything apart from one of those things is true. Now, Vicky from off of LOLO, she would stare at me whilst giggling and literally incapable of going more than 3 minutes without repeating her catchphrase, listen carefully, I'll say this only once, before giggling loudly, amused at herself, which filled me full of both endless love and endless hate, which cancelled each other out and came to a sort of blank indifference, the same way that the owner was staring at me. And then there was Rick. Now, he was staring at me, and just putting into my eyes all of this Freemasonry nonsense. Now, the Freemasons, as we all know, are a secret society who regale us with tales of how all of their sort of rituals are based in secrets that we won't know, because they know that is a lot sexier than telling the truth and saying we just forgot why we do them, to be honest. Now, as he was looking at me like this, I thought of Zach, and I thought of Monster Man, and I thought of the two lessons it seemed to be showing me. It seemed to be showing me that there's a way to enjoy the paranormal and that in a wonderful, wonderful way of learning the history about it, enjoying, engaging in it, while simultaneously having a smug self-satisfaction about it, knowing that we don't really take it seriously, and it's fine. It was teaching me that I should be like Rick Wakeman, but I don't want to be like Rick Wakeman. Surely my favourite book out of all of the books cannot be telling me this thing, in which case I thought maybe it's telling me something else. Maybe it's telling me that there are two different options when it comes to life. There's either the option that life is finite, therefore simple, therefore ultimately understandable. We can learn every individual aspect of life, and we can be smug and have a lack of any understanding of our own minds like Rick Wakeman. Or maybe it's infinitely complicated and there are certain things we'll never fully grasp, and we should use these to run forward and create our own realities, like David Icke. Now, David Icke confuses me because I really want to like him, but I'm not sure if I do. I mean, I love that he does his thinking and he works out his theories in real time on telly in front of us. Like in the 90s when he was on telly and said, "I am Christ," obviously that was just the beginning of a thought process, but he stuck with that and ran through it. I love that he does 5-hour talks without any notes, but still they keep a sort of semblance of logic to them. At least he stays within the same logic he begins with. That's wonderful. I love that people are really sort of dismissive of him and go like, "Oh, the reptilian thing, that is nonsense," and refuse to read the book. And even when they do read, you do point out that the book is about 300 pages, almost 3 times longer than a book should be. They still say this book does not count, therefore I will not read it, when you point out that the reptilian idea originally came from Madame Blavatsky, I'm pronouncing that wrong, but whatever, who wrote The Secret Doctrine in the late 1700s or the 1780s, as some people will have you believe. They will still say the idea is nonsensical. I like this about him. I like the indifference people share with him, but unfortunately he also uses a lot of these ideas to essentially speculate on the possibility of every other country in the world being shit apart from the Isle of Wight, which isn't its own country but certainly should be. Now this created a problem with me. Like, am I supposed to believe that my favourite book, Monster Man, who is sharing the tale of a child searching for love through the means of showing us every single monster that exists and explaining those through rational discourse, and simultaneously explaining those to us through the idea that they could exist, we could believe in them, it could be beautiful and open our minds. It explains this dichotomy throughout the book. Is that telling me that the only choice I can ever have is to be Rick Wakeman or David Icke? I hope not, but I suspect that's what it is. So I've learned just through the couple of minutes I've spoken to you that my favourite book ever is rubbish. If you do choose to go down the David Icke route, though, that's lovely and I salute you for it. But when it comes to inventing your own races from sort of lost continents or alien worlds, try not to use the name when you come up with these races of Aryan, because that's already been taken, quite hard to reclaim. Thank you for your patience, Joe.